Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Van Coller, and I'm the Group Chief Excitement Officer for EOH. I was appointed to head up EOH amidst a very difficult time. As one of the largest ICT organizations in South Africa, EOH had gone from being the darling of the stock market to being a company fraught with allegations of corruption and mismanagement. Today, I'm excited to share with you a story about courageous leadership. This is the journey we undertook as a leadership team and as a company to tackle the legacy corruption issues and deal with the perpetrators of wrongdoing in order to be able to save the jobs of over 11,000 people and ensure that EOH became a strong and ethical corporate citizen and an example for corporate South Africa in the fight against corruption. As signatories of the UNGC, the new EOH leadership team is proud to uphold the principles in the Charter, and we remain committed to the efforts in removing the scourge of corruption in the world. In this case study, you'll hear about the journey we undertook, our approach to stakeholder management, and the very difficult leadership decisions we had to take along the way. I'd like to thank everyone who agreed to participate in the videos that form part of this case study. The commitment to our journey and our efforts to eradicate corruption within EOH are greatly appreciated. Finally, we will share with you how this 3-year journey has taught us many lessons and created a foundation for the new leadership team, our EOH people, and our many stakeholders to focus on growth and opportunities. In this video we produced for the United Nations Global Compact event, I share my views on the journey we undertook and provide detail on what happened during those difficult times. I first became aware of the corruption issues when a whistleblower went to the newspapers and they published an article in February of 2019. And when I looked at it, very quickly we realized that what the whistleblower was saying was largely true. The problem was that we had to react incredibly quickly because it was now absolutely in the public domain. And EOH previously had had some negative press around some of these issues, but somehow had managed to squash them up until then. Well, the first thing was I needed to get all the information. And so we did two things. Firstly, I went out to the various businesses that were implicated to see what was going on. And I very quickly found an email trail of the businesses complaining to head office that there was a problem with that specific deal. And when I interviewed the people, there was clearly a problem. So what I did was I went to ENS, who were already involved in looking at 1 or 2 issues for us, and gave them an absolute open mandate to have a look at every single large public sector deal we had done since I think about 2015. And that's when we started to see this train or this small group of people at head office were using some of their positions of power to obviously win contracts. The two most important things, I realized very quickly that EOH was very systemic to South Africa Inc. We were in the middle of most financial institutions. We were in the middle of 2 or 3 of our largest metros. And if we just disappeared, there would be some systemic issues in South Africa. So the first thing was to have a look at our stakeholders and say to them, what do you want me to do? So we went to National Treasury, we went to CETA, we went to BLSA. The second thing was EOH employed over 11,000 people, excluding contractors. And I just realized that 99% of people are actually honest. They want to come to work, do a proper day's job, look after their family, and go home. And it was a small group of people who were actually ruining it for everyone. So saving jobs was absolutely imperative. So I had to go from there to all our customers and say to our customers, this is what I propose to do. If I do this, will you still remain a customer of us and keep our business in place? And history tells us that that was exactly the right thing to do, being totally transparent, being open, and actually working with our stakeholders to get the right result of saving as many jobs as possible. Well, what we did, and this was really one of the best board decisions, because we really debated what we should do, because at one point we really didn't know what the outcome was going to be. But in that board debate, we decided that we would split the running of the company from the actual investigation. And so ENS Africa got this unfettered access to all our books and records and email servers and everything. And I was almost excluded from it other than the reporting back. And that was always a board subcommittee. And in that way, I could run the business, but the investigation could go ahead unfettered and we could be totally transparent about it because there was no way I could interfere with it. And that's really what we've done. You would have seen at the Zondo Commission, I gave a general view on what was happening at EOH, but ENS Africa gave the actual specifics. And we've done that in every instance where there's been an investigation. We leave it to ENS Africa to give the detail because I was never in the detail. I was really trying to save the business with our customers, with our stakeholders, to make sure we could keep the jobs alive. Well, what's interesting, there's a big cliche, always hire people better than you. But in our situation, I really didn't have a choice because I needed the best people in each of their various guises or their various roles, because I just didn't have time to be a bossy boss. I really had to let them do their stuff, and I needed to have the best of the best so that I didn't have to look over my shoulder all the time. And in hindsight, it was really the best outcome because we've ended up with an amazing business. We've actually been able to package some of our solutions around governance, risk and control, and we're busy selling those solutions at the moment. And that's really been fantastic to see how a group of really capable people can actually go ahead in parallel rather than in series, and you get a great outcome. We had to move fast. That was the only way to get it done in such a short period of time. That's a very, very difficult balance. I suppose when you have a purpose, like save jobs, it makes it a little bit easier because you don't focus on your issues, you focus on saving the jobs and other people's issues. And we've seen that that has been one of the best outcomes. I've had so many emails from staff saying, thank you for saving our family, because through COVID and everything, a lot of people had 2 or 3 or 4 people working in a house. Today they have 1, and it's the EOH job that got saved. Yes, there were some jobs lost, but at the end of the day, we had to do the best for the majority. And so what I try to do is I try to outsource a lot of things. Don't take it on your shoulders and try and sort it all out yourself. Get the best people, like the Martin Kingstons, like the ENS Africa's, Michael Katz's. I got good counsel from National Treasury. I got good counsel from the chairman of KPMG, Professor Wiseman and Kuchlu, who had also had to deal with issues at KPMG. So the main thing was you need to outsource the decision making, because otherwise you can never do it yourself. Just the pressure gets too much. And I can only thank my board for being there the whole time to have these discussions and really deliberating it. And hindsight, we've made most of the decisions correctly, and that's really helpful. The biggest thing I think is that culture beats strategy every day. It's your people that are driving the business, but culture comes from the top down. It's not a bottom-up thing. So you have to have the right culture at the board, at the executive committee, in the leadership, to enable a business to drive doing the right business with the right people in the right way. In many organizations, corruption often gets swept under the carpet. People often know what is going on, but do nothing. As a leadership team, our approach was to break that mold in terms of dealing with issues like this. We decided to lead with transparency and take a deep dive into the challenges brought about by the previous management team. Sometimes when things appear to be at their darkest, you realize the resilience of the human spirit. and how much stronger you are when you tackle things together. And this captures the essence of our efforts in stepping into unknown territory, embracing the challenges and trusting one another, our partners in the investigation and our people as we took this journey towards finding the light. To deal with the allegations and the business reorganization, we focused on 3 operational themes: creating more transparency on the business and financials, creating a fit-for-purpose capital structure, and rebuilding credibility through establishing robust governance. In terms of credibility, we focused on rebuilding the EOH credibility and reputation by addressing the corruption allegations directly and putting processes in place to protect the business. We facilitated the bedding down of an experienced King IV compliant board, as well as bringing in an entirely new executive management team, comprising some very talented individuals who wanted to be part of the turnaround. We worked extremely hard to regain market trust by ensuring that the leadership kept all stakeholders abreast of the details of the forensic investigation as it unfolded. It was this transparency with the board and the market in general that saved the 11,000 jobs. We committed to ensuring that EOH reestablishes its role as the preeminent South African provider of ICT products and solutions on the continent to ensure that EOH is well positioned to play a key role in society with our ability to service almost the full spectrum of client needs in both large private companies and the public sector as they navigate their way towards the 4th Industrial Revolution. In 2019, a forensic investigation by ENS Forensics began in earnest. ENS Forensics found evidence of a number of governance failings, including unsubstantiated payments, tender irregularities, and unethical business practices, primarily limited to public sector businesses. All individuals implicated in the wrongdoing are no longer employed by the company, a group which included 16 EOH employees, primarily from the public sector vertical team. EOH, with the support from ENS, has fully cooperated and continues to engage with all the authorities. From a liquidity perspective, we were deeply focused on creating a sustainable organization, deleveraging the business, understanding and managing our cost base, driving productivity, and ensuring we ran an efficient working capital. This focus has come through in our results as our quality of earnings continues to improve together with our continual improvement in performance year on year. We have even achieved unqualified audits for the last 2 years by one of the Big Four firms, PwC. More recently, we're proud to say that our recent interim results announcement, we were able to tell the market that we had delivered a profit following a successful turnaround. This last 6-month result enables us to achieve the next phase of progressing an optimal capital structure to catalyze investment and growth opportunities and consequently enhance our client value proposition. In terms of transparency, running in parallel to ENS investigations, EOH set about establishing a dedicated GRC and compliance team and has overseen the implementation of extensive enhancements to the compliance program and control environment to ensure that identified gaps and deficiencies are addressed. The changes included the following: a leadership commitment to anti-bribery and corruption compliance, the rollout of a comprehensive compliance policy framework, and the implementation of face-to-face dedicated anti-bribery and corruption training for employees, in addition to online training on the newly adopted Code of Conduct. This training achieved over 90% attendance and completion rate. We have also retained ENS Africa, PwC, and the University of Stellenbosch Center for Corporate Governance in Africa to support the implementation of the new risk governance framework to ensure an effective basis for the company to move forward. Up next, one of the EOH's strategic advisors during the investigation, Martin Kingston, the chairman of Rothschild South Africa and chairman of the steering committee of the business for South Africa, and at the time of the investigation was the vice president of Business Unity South Africa. He discusses the role that transparency played in the way EOH managed its legacy corruption issues.
My name is Martin Kingston. I'm the chairman of Rothschild in South Africa. I'm also the chairman of the steering committee of Business for South Africa. And at the time that we started working with EOH, I was the vice president of Business Unity South Africa. When Stephen joined EOH at the very beginning as CEO, he asked me to come in and we discussed the fact that he felt intuitively that there were problems within the system. And we decided that we needed to open up the issues very transparently and indeed very aggressively, because Stephen, as an incoming CEO, had in fact the mandate to be able to do that. And of course, what we found, the more that we peeled this onion, was the more rotten it was. And the need to be, as I said, very honest, very transparent, and very comprehensive in dealing with the problem. And Stephen and his board, I have to say, didn't hold back from ensuring that all the necessary internal and external resources were deployed to try and understand just how pervasive and comprehensive the corruption and malfeasance had been. Well, EOH started this process in the middle of when we were having to deal with state capture in South Africa, and many very high-profile firms, international firms, had been associated with that, from KPMG and McKinsey to Bain and SAP. And the difference between EOH, I have to say, and the others was its willingness to step up to the plate and to grasp the nettle, to take ownership of the fact that there had been problems and there were problems within the business, and to arrest them as quickly as possible. What we learned, of course, is that all you need is one bad apple, in fact, to poison the entire bunch. And that, I think, is what happened within EOH and many of the other companies concerned. Most importantly, Stephen was prepared to lead by example. He recruited a team of people whose integrity, commitment, and indeed, I have to say, their transparency was beyond reproach. He hired first-class external advisors, particularly the lawyers, to help him work through this. He made a clean breast of it to the authorities. And in that context, he built real and fundamental trust with all of his stakeholders. And I think it has stood EOH in much better stead, given the fact that there was such significant systemic corruption in the company. And many companies in South Africa who've been involved actually should take a leaf from the EOH book, because we found that there is a great reticence on the part of companies. Maybe they fear prosecution, maybe they fear an impact on their share price, but in fact, the reputational damage that occurs if they don't acknowledge their role is even greater, in my opinion. And Stephen was a pathfinder in that regard, and I think has set a way forward for many of us, not just in South Africa, but further afield. We need to be able to promote whistleblowing, in particular, first and foremost, by protecting them, because they feel extremely vulnerable, and understandably so, specifically and particularly in South Africa, where the risks are very great that they are running. The companies and indeed the country needs to have a culture of openness, of honesty, of integrity, as I said before, and whistleblowers need to be actually encouraged in a system that enables them confidentially and sometimes anonymously to be able to inform the management, the leadership of the company concerned, without having to go to the authorities as to problems that exist within the company, without fear or favor as far as the whistleblowers or indeed the company itself is concerned. I think it takes a very long time for companies to recover their reputation. Reputations get built over decades and destroyed in a day. And what we've seen in the context of the corruption, malfeasance, and maladministration in South Africa has been that the denial of the fact that there was wrongdoing that has taken place, or indeed continues to take place, undermines both individual and indeed corporate credibility and therefore reputation. And it takes a very long time to rebuild trust and confidence, both in the individuals, the executives, the boards, and indeed the companies concerned. So my view is very simple. That is, there is no option, having carefully considered all of the issues, but to make a clean breast of it and to actually hold people to account internally and externally, because ultimately society holds each and every one of us to account. EOH, in my opinion, is a case study of how one should deal with issues. A new management came in, it found out that there had been significant levels of corruption, maybe only a handful of individuals, but it had contaminated the entire company and indeed the perception of the company, with radical ramifications for its employees, for its shareholders and for its stakeholders more broadly. And they have held the line over the last 3 years in prosecuting that approach, as I said, of integrity and transparency. And I think it is really a very good role model for other companies, both in South Africa and internationally.
Since embarking on its turnaround strategy, EOH has made great progress towards building a sustainable organization while navigating the negative effects of the issues inherited from previous management, as well as the impact of COVID-19. The near-term priority has been on improving EBITDA performance, as well as the disposal of non-core units as part of a deleverage strategy, while building a robust governance framework to enable the future growth of the business. Our business is now more focused, less complex, with our capital structure and cash generation improving. As we embark on a new phase in our evolution, following a period of consolidation, our emphasis is now on enhancing our value proposition and growing our core business from a top line and earnings perspective. We are well positioned to take advantage of the exponential shifts in the world today, which creates an opportunity to be the most attractive digital transformation enabler throughout Africa and beyond. We continue to deliver on all our promises and ensure that EOH quality of earnings is retained. From May 2019 to April 2022, we have seen vast improvement in solidifying our governance framework. We continue as a board and as a management team to have zero tolerance for bribery and corruption. This can only happen if you have the right procedures in place, and this is really a continual improvement slide. The team and the people have really come together in the Road to Green process. This is real testament to the EOH people and their character and the ability to change. As we embarked on our turnaround strategy and strengthened our efforts to deal with the legacy issues, the new EOH leadership, along with the board and strategic partners, focused its efforts on actioning meaningful and sustainable changes. In the next clip, the current EOH chairperson of the board, Mr. Andrew Mtembu, talks about the importance of EOH leadership walking the talk.
It remains critical for a company's leadership and board to adhere to their fiduciary responsibilities, as credibility cannot be achieved without transparency and accountability. As a board, we realize the importance of supporting the CEO and leadership team in its efforts to uncover the full extent of legacy corruption. This was done in order to hold accountable those who committed the wrongdoings and to ensure that they were brought to book. As a responsible corporate citizen, we also acknowledge that we needed to lead the way in terms of how we dealt with all our stakeholders, and to ensure that at all times they were kept informed about how the process was unfolding. The current board of directors of EOH spent a significant amount of time rebuilding credibility through establishing a robust governance framework. This included creating more transparency within the business and ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the financial information disclosed to the market, whilst at the same time continuing to work through the remaining legacy issues that it had. EOH worked tirelessly to address the inherited legacy issues and to ensure that EOH is once again a respected name in the South African ICT sector. Upon receiving the ENS Africa report, the current board and leadership took the following actions. The ENS Africa report revealed evidence of a number of governance failings and wrongdoing at EOH. As a group, EOH was committed to ensuring that all perpetrators of wrongdoing are brought to justice. Following the outcome of the forensic investigation, the current board and leadership reported the concerns and the details of the parties implicated in the irregularities to the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigation, better known as the OPS. The company has also terminated the employment relationship with individuals who have been directly implicated in the identified wrongdoing. The suspicious transactions arising from the investigation were reported to the Financial Intelligence Center. The current board of directors agreed to pursue civil prosecutions against some of the perpetrators identified during the forensic investigation. The current EOH board and leadership will continue to act decisively in respect of any further wrongdoing that may be identified in the group. And this is as part of its business as usual, and also in line with its zero tolerance on corruption policy.
Some of the significant legal actions EOH has taken on its road to green were to, firstly, comprehensively and strategically deal with and close out the legacy contracts identified in the forensic investigation. EOH then engaged with the SIU to settle overpayments received by EOH. EOH and ENS were asked by the Zondo Commission to present evidence on matters relating to state capture. This was presented in November 2020 and May 2021. In addition, EOH instituted civil action against the perpetrators and previous management to claim damages it suffered due to unlawful payment practices and harm caused to EOH's reputation. As you may be aware, EOH provided assistance to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture. Recently, we received acknowledgement by Judge Raymond Zondo in his fourth report to the President of South Africa on the outcome of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture. In his report, Judge Zondo said about EOH that there is no other company that has been of greater assistance to the Commission in relation to the investigation of historical wrongdoings within its ranks. This was a truly proud day for all of us at EOH to receive this accolade, and we remain committed as a group to transparency with a firm commitment to continue our ethical corporate citizenship. We will also continue to shine a light on the critical importance of standing up for what is right and in supporting the efforts to remove the scourge of corruption in our country. One of the fundamental issues we need to grapple with as leaders, and certainly as a society, is that rules, guidelines, and codes of ethics are not enough to prevent the staggering levels of corruption and deviation from ethical standards that we are seeing not only in South Africa, but around the world. The world is very different today, and the only way to future-proof your business is if you grow ethically and sustainably, and to be transparent both with your customers as well as with your staff and your communities. Allow me to share some of the lessons that we have learned along the way. Businesses aren't corrupt, people are. Corruption is instigated, normalized, and practiced by individuals who have made the choice to be corrupt. If you don't have a culture of doing the right things in the right way with the right customers, you're finished. Combating that culture of corruption can revive a business. Complex corporate structures are at particular risk of corrupt practices. Complexity is sometimes explicitly implemented to obscure. The solution is accountability and transparency. The separation of crucial roles to avoid conflicts of interest. For example, I'm the CEO, but I can't sign a check. I do not have access to the bank accounts. The FD who signs the checks doesn't have access to onboard customers. That's the role of the Chief Risk Officer. And in that way, it just removes this temptation or ability for people to be corrupt. Limited governance and compliance are early indicators of possible corruption. The governance structure is also a reflection of executive culture, which is even more important. Checks and balances are vital and should be established in 3 layers: your frontline employees, a compliance and internal audit function, and then an external audit as second and third lines of defense. For me, board independence is absolutely crucial. South Africa has a world-class governance guideline, in the King Code, and its implementation really makes a difference to oversight. Make sure the board meetings are happening properly. Quality of minutes and presentation packs are a very quick indicator of how well these guidelines are being adhered to. And lastly, make it very easy for whistleblowers. This is one thing that really saved us. It's not good enough just to get information from whistleblowers. It must be actionable. The whistleblowers are the real heroes in all of this because they're the ones that are sticking their neck out. You need to treat them properly. We delivered the Expose It whistleblowing app, which allows you to do more than get something off your chest. It allows you to build a case. It is very important for there to be visible action and two-way communication. It's a courageous thing whistleblowers are doing. They need to feel supported, valued, and protected because after all, they are your best people to give you the detail because they're at the coalface. And I can tell you from experience, 99.9% of people want to do the right thing in the right way always. Do not use middlemen. They are a risk as you cannot control what they are doing, but they are representing your brand. Today, if you're using middlemen, you are using the wrong business model. Furthermore, South African legislation actually refers to this as fronting and as illegal. And lastly, if you don't stand for something as a leader, you stand for nothing. If you compromised once, you're internally compromised. What has kept us going at EOH is the realization that 99% of people truly want to do the right thing. People want to subscribe to a moral code that makes them feel good and worthy. Everyone in the business needs to be accountable for delivery of their bit. Not only is it a best practice for employee satisfaction, it also ensures the right culture from the top. What is interesting is that as we managed through one crisis, we got hit with another crisis. And COVID really taught us a few things about really managing a business in a crisis. And let me take you through some of my realizations. The first one was the 3 C's: communicate, communicate, communicate. In a crisis, there's a lot of uncertainty, and giving your staff some certainty that you are at least thinking about things, know what's going on, trying to be proactive will really help them feel more comfortable and they can continue delivering. Not communicating allows all sorts of speculation. You cannot communicate enough. We communicated every week to employees through the whole of the first lockdown, and we've now brought that back to a monthly communication. We also communicated with our board regularly, had regular meetings just to make sure we were thinking about everything. It is the most important thing. You cannot communicate enough. Secondly, you need to be proactive and increase the pace of decision making. They say the worst decision is no decision. You've got to make decisions. You've got to take a stance and move in a direction. At least people know where they are going. And if you make a bad decision, you can always change it. But no decision keeps everyone guessing. Thirdly, what really helped us at EOH was we activated a clear vision. We actually went through a whole strategy setting process. People suddenly were left at home and didn't feel connected to the business. We got them involved in our future vision with the strategy, and that gave them something to focus on, something to think about, and something to feel part of. It made a huge difference. You also needed to build resilience. You don't know what's coming. You don't know how things are going to pan out. So just do some things. We sold a few businesses. We saved some big costs just to build up some cash in the balance sheet, and we did it right up front. And there were some very difficult decisions there, but we did them, we lived them, and it really gave us a buffer as we went through uncertain times. And this also goes to making the organization extra efficient. If I've learned one thing out of COVID, there's no good time in a business cycle not to be efficient. You've got to be the most efficient in the boom times so that you can build up reserves for the bad times, because you don't know when they're coming. If you think about us, we had corruption, we then had COVID. Soon after that, we had the strikes and the issues down in Durban, and that got closely followed by the Ukrainian war. All of those have put pressure on the business. If we hadn't have got efficient up front, we would have really struggled. Number 6, I think, is really important, because if you want to activate a clear vision, you want to increase the pace of decision making, you really need to get close to the facts. You have to be speaking to people. You got to understand what's going at the coalface. You need to understand your numbers, because that can then drive proper data-driven decisions. And it's really important, otherwise you will make more wrong decisions. And then lastly, and most importantly, is stay close to your customers. They were also going through stress. They also had issues. And what we couldn't afford to do is become their bankers, their bank account. But we also needed to support them, because they needed to get through the problems as well. And sitting with them, understanding their problems, reimagining our contracts, moving, scaling business processes up and down to help them deal with what they had to deal with in the right way without putting the burden on us, was really important. And a lot of those customers are now very loyal followers of EOH today. If it weren't for the courage, perseverance, and fortitude of whistleblowers, we would not have been able to undertake and complete this journey. I pay tribute to them for their bravery and remind us all about the critical role they play in lifting the veil on corruption globally. They need to be protected, supported, and celebrated. Having completed our turnaround strategy and put our legacy issues behind us, we believe we now have a solid foundation for future growth. Although this was a tough journey, we needed to go through it as a team. And together we rallied around a future vision for ourselves that could be built by adopting a solve mindset. We continue as a board and as a management team to have zero tolerance for bribery and corruption. This can only happen if you have the right procedures in place. This is really a continual improvement program. The team and the people have really come together in the Road to Green process. Our turnaround speaks for itself and is a real testament to the EOH people and their character and the ability to be agile and adapt. Our past is behind us, EOH is now back in the black, and we're ready to go get our future.
Hi, I'm Alan Pullinger, First Rand CEO. Yeah, I mean, I guess like many South Africans and taxpayers, we were, deeply disappointed. I suppose what made it worse is EOH was at one point in time was the darling of the market. So, listed, lots of investors had climbed into the EOH story. It seemed like a really good story. It had continued for some time. It was one of the hot stocks, if you like, in the market. And I guess, that all came down. So it wasn't just the corruption, but it was also the investment proposition and the story, which I think disappointed so many people. A lot of people lost money in the business, that had invested in the shares. And then I guess, one always, hears an issue around fraud, and, one hopes it's contained. Maybe it's a minor issue. It's sort of blown out of proportion. But I guess as more and more detail came out, and the extent of it, I think it was deeply disappointing. Well, EOH is it's one of the big service providers, to I think all of the big banks, and certainly a long-standing service provider to the First Rand Group and to FNB, I guess in particular. Of course, we had to stand back. We had to really think about what was going on here. I remember some early conversations that we had with Stephen, and how did we take that forward? We asked for full accountability. Please keep us informed of what's going on. I guess we really didn't want any more surprises. We pushed quite hard to say, has the worst come out? Is the business, is the board taking this stuff seriously. I guess we held, Stephen's feet to the fire. We were very open. We were candid with Stephen. We said it's a great business. It's provided great services to us. But if this thing doesn't get back on the right track, if we don't see the right steps being taken, we're going to have no choice but to walk away. We simply can't continue with that relationship. So we pushed Stephen hard. And I must say he was really good, meeting with the team, coming out, sharing the plans. He told us when further public announcements were going to be made. Of course, we followed a lot of that progress in the press and the own statements that EOH put out. And we were comfortable that it looked like there was remediation taking place. I guess what helped in the conversation is I knew Stephen and a lot of the senior executives knew Stephen from his banking days, so he wasn't an unknown quantity for us. We really kind of knew the character of the individual that we were speaking to. We also knew that, of course, Stephen had he had no incentive but to absolutely clean up. His prospects, lie in the new EOH, and he's got nothing to do with the old EOH. So we knew he was going to follow a particular approach. We knew he was going to turn over all the rocks. And we could see it. We could see it in a refresh of the board. We could see, a new sort of corporate governance policy being published by the business, code of ethics. There was a lot of change that we could see in the organization. And then, of course, EOH, really did pitch up at the Zondo Commission, and they received very high praise from the Chief Justice, and there wasn't a lot of praise that has been dished out to corporates in the 4 volumes that have been published so far. But EOH was singled out, and really stood out, I think, head and shoulders around the way they approached the commission, the degree of transparency, the unpack. I think they've spoken very candidly. The stuff EOH themselves have done, around purging themselves of the people, that caused all these problems for them. They've launched their own legal proceedings against them to try and recover shareholder money, and perhaps money that is due back to the state for some of these projects. So, I guess when you really stand back, it's not that fraud happens in an organization and that's the end of it. It can happen to any organization. And certainly, when all of this stuff has happened, we haven't sat back and gloated. We've asked ourselves, okay, in our own organization, are we sure we haven't got this stuff? How do we know we haven't got it? And the issue is not that it doesn't happen. As I said, it's more about when it happens, what do you do? And here I can really say, I think EOH does set an example, I think, for corporate South Africa. There are few corporates that have really gone to the extent that EOH has to kind of tidy up the mess, put it to bed, making sure it's transparent, making sure there aren't further surprises coming out. And as tough as it is now for EOH, there's no doubt that organization is going to emerge a lot stronger and a lot more ethical, I think, than probably it ever was.